Բարև ձեզ, այսօր իմ հյուրն է Էստոնիայի նախկին արտգործնախարար Եվրախորհրդարանի պատգամավոր Եվրամիություն Հարավային Կովկաս համագործակցության հանձնաժողովների նախագահ Մարինա Kaljurandը։ Նրա հետ կզրուցենք Արցախում ստեղծված հումանիտար ճգնաժամի մասին։ Good day, Ms. Kaljurand. Thanks for accepting the interview request. So you had a meeting with the Foreign Minister of Armenia, who is on a working visit to Belgium. What range of issues did you discuss?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. And thank you for inviting me. Yes, I just came from the meeting of the European Parliament Foreign Affairs Committee with the Foreign Minister of Armenia, Mr. Mirzayan, and it was in-camera meeting, so I can't go into all the details, but I can say that we discussed all the questions, starting with yesterday's decision of the EU to deploy the civilian monitoring mission to Armenia, about the humanitarian crisis in Lachin corridor, about Armenian aspirations. So we covered a wide range of questions.
So for more than 40 days, Azerbaijan has closed the Lachin corridor. How do you assess the starvation of 120,000 people, depriving them of gas and electricity and violating their fundamental rights by Azerbaijan in the 21st century in the neighborhood of the European Union, in the area of responsibility of the Council of Europe and the OSCE?
Last week, the European Parliament had a plenary discussion on the situation of humanitarian crisis in Nagorno-Karabakh, and we also passed a resolution. The resolution was supported by all political groups of the European Parliament and by a vast majority of the members of the European Parliament. And in the resolution, we called Azerbaijan to take steps to stop the blockade, to open normal humanitarian corridors. Yes, we also mentioned the violation of human rights in respect of 120,000 Armenians, when we said that we were referring to the call by the Azerbaijani president to Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh either to take Azerbaijani citizenship or to leave the region, which is in violation of humanitarian rights and human rights of each and every Armenian living in Nagorno-Karabakh. We also asked for international peacekeeping, because the understanding of the European Parliament is very strict and very clear. Russian peacekeepers have failed. They have failed in their obligation to secure security in the region and to protect civilians. And that's why European Parliament thinks that Russian peacekeepers should be replaced by international peacekeepers, either OSCE or United Nations. It's up to the Azerbaijan and Armenia to decide and to say what they prefer. So that's why I think the yesterday decision of the EU's civil mission in Armenia is of utmost importance.
So you mentioned about the resolution. You were one of the first to react the blockade of the Lachin corridor, and the resolution was also adopted by your efforts. But however, how do you assess the adoption of that resolution, and what's the main emphasis of it?
Yes, I made my first statement on the 15th of December after the first couple of days have passed of the blockade of the Lachin corridor. I made the statement as the chair of the European Parliament South Caucasus delegation. But that was me speaking as the chair of the South Caucasus delegation. Last week's resolution reflected much more wider picture. It reflected the understanding of the whole European Parliament. And I'd like just to remind that European Parliament, it's 705 independent members of European Parliament who are being elected in their respective countries. So it's a big democratic body, and this big democratic house will never tolerate violation of international law, violation of human rights, humanitarian law, and that's why it was extremely, extremely important that the resolution was adopted by majority, by very big majority, and we hope that Azerbaijanis will take the steps that we urge them to take in the resolution.
But however, don't you think that today we are witnessing the policy of ethnic cleansing of Armenians in Artsakh?
I do not want to put labels. what I see is a humanitarian catastrophe. What I learned is that even one person died because he could not reach medical assistance. I know that schools are being closed. I know that there is a shortage of medical equipment, of food, of heat, of electricity, and all these steps that are putting Armenians, 120,000 Armenians, on the brink of humanitarian catastrophe on auto-K in the 21st century. And we in Brussels, representing 28 democratic countries, just can't be silent and watch that happening. And that was the reason why we adopted that resolution.
And Ms. Kaljurand, from the official statements of Azerbaijan, it can be concluded that Baku is not going to follow international calls. Isn't it time for the international community to move from calls and statements to practical steps? And what steps there can be taken in this regard? Practical steps.
I think it can be discussed and it should be discussed. I'm looking towards High Representative Joseph Borrell. I'm looking towards the European Commission, because these are the institutions that can take practical steps. European Parliament is a political body that can call. We do not have our instruments of practical steps, but we can encourage other institutions, we can encourage other member states. So yes, after adoption of the resolution, which was also forwarded to the President of the Commission, High Representative of Foreign Affairs, I really do expect also hear from them and see what is their reaction and how they are seeing and evaluating the situation.
And in the European Parliament, you announced that Azerbaijani officials have started a witch hunt against you, stressing that they will not be able to intimidate or silence you. What kind of threats are we talking about, Ms. Kaljurand?
Oh yes, well, I was Estonian ambassador to Russia from 2005 to 2008. And if you remember, it was the Bronze Night in Tallinn. Those were cyber attacks on Estonia, and my embassy was under attack by youth organization Nashi, which was in close cooperation with Kremlin. So what I'm experiencing today from the official Azerbaijan reminds me very much the attacks of the Kremlin-led Nashi youth organizations. This witch hunt is groundless. I'm being accused of things which are ridiculous, so I'm not even going to mention them. But yes, my message to Azerbaijani officials has been very clear. They will not frighten me. They will not silence me. As a member of the European Parliament, as a member being elected by my electorate in Estonia, I will continue representing democratic views. I will continue speaking on behalf of those whose rights are being violated. And I will be outspoken in support of democracy, not only in Armenia, but in every country in the world.
And Azerbaijan continues to occupy some regions of the sovereign territory of Armenia. As an experienced politician, how do you think the situation is perceived in the European institutions? Isn't there any awareness that ignoring the actions of an aggressor country unleashes new aggressions?
War is never a solution. The first war of Nagorno-Karabakh was a mistake. The second war also was a mistake. But now it's time for both countries to come together and to find mutually acceptable peace regulation. I do not see that the tensions could end or peace could come to Nagorno-Karabakh or between the two nations unless there is a real political will by the leadership of both countries to start peace negotiations, to conclude peace negotiations, and to have a workable, sustainable peace agreement. Unfortunately, today I do not see that there is enough of political will, and I'm sorry about that. And I really do want to see Armenian and Azerbaijani people as happy as I would say Estonians are today, Latvians, Lithuanians are today, in deciding their future, in finding with whom they want to cooperate, with whom they want to share their future with. This is the right of each and every nation. So I really do hope that the political leaderships of both countries will come together. the way they have promised when meeting Charles Michel in Brussels, the President of the Council, and find a way of concluding long-standing and sustainable peace agreement. That is the only solution.
And you also talked about the agreement which was reached on sending a civilian mission of the European Union to Armenia for a period of 2 years. How do you assess this initiative, and will it contribute to the stabilization of the situation?
I very much hope so. I very much hope that it will contribute to the security, to the safety of Armenian people, and to stability on the border. And I think that everybody should understand it is a very big step from the side of the EU. Never before has EU been so much engaged in relations with Armenia. Never before has EU been so present in Armenia. So I very much hope that all people of Armenia understand the importance of this step. And I really, as I said, I do believe that it will bring along stability, safety to the people of Armenia. And I hope that at some point it might grow wider and it might grow into a border monitoring or border control mission, engaging also Azerbaijan. Like, for example, we have EU monitoring mission in Georgia.
And Ms. Kaljurand, last year in July, the new gas agreement between the European Union and Azerbaijan, as well as very warm announcements by the European Commission President, calling Azerbaijan a reliable partner, received a strong response in Armenia. Don't you think these factors can constrain the European Council from giving clear assessments of Azerbaijan's actions?
EU respects democracy. EU respects international law, human rights. And EU does business, but also it doesn't mean that it will keep a silent eye or silent voice on violation of human rights. So we are very open and frank with our partners. We might have trade deals, trade agreements, we might have cultural exchanges, we might have humanitarian exchanges, but if there is violation of international law, of human rights law, of the democracy principles, then we are outspoken on that point. And Azerbaijan will not be an exception. So doing business is one thing, but it does not mean that we will not criticize on the cases of violation of human rights law, like we did with the resolution last week.
Thanks for the interview, Ms. Kaljurand, and thanks for your efforts.
Thank you and all the best. Thank you.
Այսօր իմ հյուրն էր Էստոնիայի նախկին արտգործնախարար Եվրախորհրդարանի պատգամավոր Եվրամիություն Հարավային Կովկաս համագործակցության հանձնաժողովների նախագահ Մարինա Kaljurandը։ Հաջողություն։